Then their anger boils over.
This is Larry Darnell Gordon, an inmate brought into the Berrien County Courthouse, St. Joseph, Michigan. Gordon, 44, was facing charges that could lock him away for life: criminal conduct, kidnapping, and assault. He had a history of break-ins and weapons possession. The day was July 11th, 2016. Inside courtroom 315, a routine hearing was about to end. The judge ruled Gordon wasn't needed further and ordered that he be escorted back to his holding cell. No one in that room knew that Gordon had already made a decision: get free or die trying. Those words were later found in a letter he wrote from jail. As deputies led him out to the hallway, Gordon acted. A man is seen running across the camera towards Gordon as he tries to dispossess Deputy Atterbury off camera. That is Security Director Joseph Zangaro. But Gordon didn't stop there. The shot sent the people in the courtroom running for safety. As Security Director Joseph Zangaro sprinted toward the hallway, unlocking the door leading to the holding area, there was another gunshot off camera, and he never made it through. It was chaos and deadly gunfire. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, the law wasted no time before it was soon on his trail. Gordon bolted. But the officers were on him now, and this is when Gordon does the unthinkable. He takes 8 hostages. He even uses one of them, a woman, as a shield. But then, two hostages break free. Gordon fires again, and then the law closes in. When the officers finally reach Gordon, he's down. For Larry Darnell Gordon, his escape attempt ended the only way it could, with him fulfilling his own prophecy: die trying. But what about a man who ended a judge's life and went on a run? This is Brian G. Nichols, 33 years old, standing trial for and false imprisonment inside the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia. He wasn't new to the justice system. His first trial had ended in a hung jury. But on the morning of March 11th, 2005, he was back for retrial. And something was different. Moments before, he had made threats. He told inmates he wouldn't go down easy. In fact, shanks were found on him, and the courthouse took necessary precautions.
Sheriff's Department is in charge of courtroom security, and they were immediately receptive to our requests and to Judge Barnes' request to put more deputies in there, and they did. They put 2 additional deputies in there during the entire proceeding.
But that wasn't enough. Nichols was being escorted to court when, all of a sudden, he attacked Deputy Cynthia Hall. He beat her viciously, took her sidearm, and left her motionless. She would later survive, but never fully recover. But Nichols was not done. He forced his way into Judge Roland Barnes's courtroom. Witnesses said he moved with purpose. No shouting, no hesitation, just walked straight in. Then he raised the gun and fired. Judge Barnes collapsed behind the bench. Court reporter Julie Brandau was shot next. A split second later, Nichols turned toward the doors. He knew what he'd done, but he wasn't done yet. As officers scrambled upstairs, Nichols slipped out through a stairwell. A responding deputy, Sergeant Hoyt Teasley, met him near an exit. Then,
they told us to get to the edge of the sidewalk, and I just peered around and I saw him collapse. He was sort of standing when I saw him, but he collapsed.
After that, he ran.
I was entering the garage, got my ticket, and thought I heard shots. Didn't pay a whole lot of attention, went on to turn to go up the ramp, and I saw a guy run past me. We started hearing all of the sirens. Got to the top and got parked, and immediately went to look over the wall to see what was going on, and that's when we saw the sheriff down. That's when it kind of hit me. That probably was a guy that ran past me.
He was armed, mobile, and unpredictable, and the manhunt began. But hours later, about 15 miles away, he broke into a newly built home, killing David Wilhelm, an off-duty ICE agent. He took his gun, badge, and truck. By now, the police knew this was a dangerous case.
This person is very violent. He's taken 3 individuals' lives. And so we have to assume that he's very, very dangerous. And that's what we're going to continue to assume until he turns himself in. Because this person has a weapon. He's already demonstrated by killing 3 individuals and shooting another person or pistol whipping another individual. And so we're not going to stop until we, exhaust all of our lead.
Then, in the early hours of March 12th, Nichols forced his way into an apartment in Duluth, Georgia. The tenant, Ashley Smith, 26, was alone. He tied her up and held her hostage. But that was not before he told her who he was and how he'd killed people. But then he also said he was tired. But what was Nichols really running from? What spooked him?
Found guilty on these charges.
His possible penalty, he was accused of 2 7-deadlies, and they carry a potential life imprisonment. He was also charged with possessing a firearm during a felony, which would have been an additional 5 years.
Who else could he possibly be looking for?
Well, I'd say this, Judge Barnes did nothing, in our estimation, to insult this man. The court reporter did nothing. This deputy who was shot at the end was just somebody
If these people did nothing, why did Nichols purposefully shoot them?
We think what set him off is that he was coming back a second time. I think he probably realized, in fact, he actually said to Gail, you're doing a better job this time. I think that he realized that he might get convicted this time.
Yesterday, as Mr. Howard said, he did look at me and say, "You're doing a much better job." He's always come across as very cocky, but again, there was no evidence.
It was Ashley Smith that finally convinced Nichols to turn himself in. According to her,
I read to him from The Purpose-Driven Life. He asked me what my purpose was. I told him, maybe it's to help you.
She said he cried, then let her go. Smith ran outside and called 911. Within minutes, the SWAT trucks arrived. Nichols surrendered quietly, no more gunfire. But by then, 4 people were already dead. Judge Barnes, Julie Brandau, Sergeant Teasley, and Agent Wilhelm. Nichols was convicted on 54 counts and sentenced to multiple life terms without parole. Brian Nichols wreaked havoc in court and later surrendered to the law. But what about a man who doesn't get the chance to, whose purpose is not survival, but the deadly intent of ending a judge's life? This is David Paradiso, standing trial for murder in San Joaquin County Superior Court. Paradiso, 29, had stabbed his girlfriend, Eileen Pelt, brutally until she died. The evidence was clear. She'd been found with fatal neck wounds, dumped near a roadside in Amador County. It was March 4th, 2009. Paradiso was in the witness stand being cross-examined. Unknown to the court, he had managed to smuggle a cutting instrument into the courtroom, something that shouldn't have happened.
Say they're not sure how Paradiso obtained the weapon, but family members say they had warned deputies they thought Paradiso had some sort of cutting device.
With Paradiso still in the witness box, his mother left the courtroom. And then,
he went for the judge, and at that time, then he began twisting a knife and stabbing motion and twisting the knife against the judge's neck.
the scene was chaotic. However, help was close at hand. Detective Eric Bradley, the lead investigator on the original murder case, was in the courtroom observing the proceedings, and he did something that would end up being very fatal.
Police Detective Eric Bradley is the officer who fatally shot Paradiso. Officials say he's been placed on administrative leave while the shooting is investigated.
And this is exactly what happened from eyewitnesses.
David Paradiso was sitting on the witness stand, and his face and the look of him, he was completely a different color. He just didn't look like the same person. And when the prosecuting attorney started to interview him, it was like the questions that his response to the questions was totally out of left field, 180-degree left field. Like, he started making connotations about the individual, the girl he had murdered, and he also started making statements that she deserved to die, and then the courtroom became so disruptive.
That was the first sign that David Paradiso had lost his cool.
Thereafter, I told the judge, I think we have to hear him out in the presence of the jury. So the judge then had the bailiff, Willis, to go out and secure a room for the jury. Willis came back. Paradiso was still sitting in his chair and found the room for the jury. So when the jury stood up, he stood up. And there was a deputy standing between the jury box and the witness. Nobody standing between the witness, Mr. Paradiso, and the judge.
With no one between Paradiso and the judge, an officer was alert.
Officer told him, sit down. So Paradiso seemed like confused. I don't know if it was intentional or not. And he put his hands in his pocket, and then he began to sit down. He stood up again. The officer said, sit down. And I yelled across the courtroom. He says, hey, sit down.
But Paradiso did not sit down.
Now, at that time, he backed up against the wall and pulled out an object from his right pocket. And it was long. And I thought maybe it was a pen similar to this with a pointed end. And just about that time, he looked at the jury, then he looked at the bailiff, and then he went for the judge.
Paradiso was hell-bent on ending the judge until help came along.
Judge's bench, and then that's when the officer reached over me, reached around me somehow, and I saw the gun pressed into the Paradiso's chest, and it was discharged, shot.
One of the eyewitnesses had this to say about Officer Bradley and the incident.
Officer Bradley had the weapon, and I saw David Paradiso fall off the judge. But as far as I'm concerned, Officer Bradley is my hero, because Judge Fox her life was in danger. It really was.
Although Bradley contained Paradiso before he could inflict more harm, the defendant had already caused enough damage. The courtroom was immediately locked down as emergency personnel rushed to the scene. Judge Fox had to get immediate treatment. Judge Cinda Fox made a full recovery from her injuries, but she decided it was time to retire, still emotionally scarred from the incident. As for David Paradiso, the law took a harsh measure, leaving him dead. But what happens when a teenager who wants his brother freed goes into the courtroom with concealed weapons and enlists the help of inmates standing trial to help him? This is Jonathan Jackson, whose brother George Jackson was being held in San Quentin prison for armed robbery offenses. While there, he was also charged with the murder of a prison guard. Judge Harold Haley was presiding over the case of James McClain, who was on trial for assaulting a corrections officer at the Marin County Civic Center in San Rafael, California. What followed next was simply terrifying.
And I was here maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and the whole group of hostages and suspects, with the exception of one, went out through this door here.
The accused, James McClain, a San Quentin inmate, had stabbed a prison guard while serving a term in prison. 2 other inmates, Rochelle McGee and William Christmas, were called in as witnesses that fateful day. However, everything all started with George L. Jackson getting into trouble.
Mrs. Jackson, how long has your son been in prison?
Since 1961.
How did that all start?
He was with a fellow who arrived at a service station in Los Angeles. They were in his old car together, and according to a witness, a young man who worked at the filling station, he said that this man came in with a gun and robbed him, that he didn't see my son at all.
With George Jackson in prison, the dominoes started to fall. On January 13, 1970, 3 black prisoners at Soledad Prison in Monterey County were shot by a white guard during a fighting incident. The shootings were ruled justifiable homicide. However, just after that, a white guard was killed in what authorities believed was retaliation. 3 black inmates were charged with his murder. After they were charged with murder, the 3 black prisoners became known as the Soledad Brothers. Their case became a movement cause among radical groups here. George L. Jackson was among the Soledad Brothers, and reports say his brother was passionate about getting him freed. August 7, 1970 was the fateful day. Inside the Marin County Civic Center, Judge Haley was presiding over the trial of James McClain. Unknown to anyone, the next few hours were going to make national headlines. Jonathan Jackson, just 17 years old and brother of imprisoned Black Panther, George Jackson, entered the courtroom with a long raincoat despite the summer heat. He was carrying 3 guns, all registered to Angela Davis, a UCLA professor and Black Panther supporter. Jackson sat with the spectators for a few moments watching the proceeding, and suddenly...
And looking to the spectator side of the courtroom, saw a tall, light-complected Negro with bushy hair pointing a handgun at the back of the neck of Lieutenant Dixon of San Quentin Correctional Force. Everybody hit the floor except some of the lady jurors. This stranger came forward and passed the handgun to the defendant McClain, who put the gun on Judge Haley.
The operation freed 3 other inmates apart from John McClain, who was standing trial.
The intervener withdrew from the bag, a large bag, an automatic rifle, covered all the correctional personnel, and at gunpoint they were forced to unshackle the witness McGee, who had been on the witness stand. McGee was then armed too, and I think it was McGee who was sent to the holding cell to liberate the 3 remaining witnesses who were under guard in the holding cell.
The attackers forced Judge Haley to call the sheriff, trying to negotiate the release of the Soledad brothers. Road flares were taped to Haley's neck, but then replaced by a sawed-off shotgun taped under his chin. Then the group took 4 hostages: Judge Haley, Deputy District Attorney Gary Thomas, and 2 jurors. They forced everyone into a rented Ford van and drove toward the US 101 freeway, demanding the release of George Jackson and the other Soledad brothers. The moment they left the Civic Center, the situation became a full-scale emergency.
I secured a shotgun from one of our units that was on the street and advised him again to relay via radio to the office just precisely what we had, and advising him again to close off the area.
As the kidnappers tried to escape, McClain fired at officers from the moving van. The police returned fire. Judge Haley suffered fatal wounds from both the shotgun taped to his neck and a pistol shot to the chest. But he was not the only victim. Jonathan Jackson, Christmas, and McClain all died in the shootout. Deputy District Attorney Gary Thomas was paralyzed for life by a bullet through his spine. Juror Maria Elena Graham was shot in the arm. The only surviving attacker, Rochelle McGee, was seriously wounded. Angela Davis, whose guns were used in the attack, became the subject of a nationwide manhunt. She fled California, using disguises and false identification. The FBI finally captured her in New York City on October 13, 1970. Davis was charged with conspiracy, kidnapping, and homicide. After a highly publicized trial, she was found not guilty on all counts in 1972. Rachel Majai pleaded guilty to aggravated kidnapping, receiving a life sentence. He was finally released in July 2023 after 67 years in prison. The Marin County Civic Center shooting wasn't the end. The Weather Underground was formed in response to what they considered police brutality. Their activism involved planting bombs at specific public places. The bombings continued throughout 1971. They placed 2 bombs at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Both of them exploded on March 1st. After the mysterious murder of George Jackson in August, the group attacked 3 offices of the California prison system. The violence surrounding the Soledad brothers case continued for years, even after Judge Harold had paid for it with his life. Judge Harold lost his life facing danger in the line of duty. But what happens when a client turns on a lawyer right on the steps of a courthouse? This is William Strier, 64. He is a man tangled in a trust dispute and a probate fight that had gone on for months. His actions showed that he believed money was being kept from him, and that the people who should have protected his settlement were instead stealing from him. He had left angry phone calls. He had threatened the trustee. He had threatened the system, but no one seemed to take him seriously. On that fateful day, he arrived at the courthouse ready to do more than just threatening. William came to a hearing connected to that trust. Gerald E. Jerry Curry, a 53-year-old probate lawyer, represented the trustee for Strier's Special Needs Trust, a trust created from a settlement Strier received after a prior injury. Strier thought Curry had been paid at his expense. He thought money was being withheld that he needed for surgeries. The paperwork, the trustee's motions, the phone calls, they all narrowed into a single dangerous grievance. The courthouse that morning was busy with reporters and TV crews covering something else: the Robert Blake murder proceedings. Cameras were already rolling on the breezeway where courthouse foot traffic funnels passed. Unknown to the cameramen, something frightening was about to unfold. Strier met Curry, and as the latter passed him on the walkway, words were exchanged. Witnesses later said Strier shoved Curry. And that was when everything started. The cameraman, stunned, present, and already filming, catches everything. Strier, the man in a tan jacket, becomes the center of attention. As for Curry, it is a case of life and death as he races for cover behind a narrow tree while Strier repeatedly fires around it. Witnesses say they remember Strier shouting,
"That's what you get for stealing my money."
It plays in the film like a motive in a single line. Curry tries to use the tree as a shield. He ducks, he begs. The shooter keeps advancing and shooting. The cameramen keep rolling, stunned. It is almost like a scene from a movie, except that this time it was real. Strier was trying to get someone killed, and then after...
Remarkably, the attorney survived, and after the shooting, 60-year-old William Strier calmly walked away from the scene.
Witnesses counted multiple shots. News crews later confirmed 6 shots fired at the attorney. And then, shockingly, Strier puts the gun back in his pocket and begins to walk away from the scene, calmly, as if nothing has happened. This is when a nearby off-duty traffic court judge and reserve deputy, David Katz, react.
An off-duty sheriff's deputy eventually tackled him. He's now behind bars. Cameras waiting for people to come out of the Robert Blake murder trial captured the entire incident. Police say Strier was upset over the way his lawyer, John Curry, was handling his case.
Strier's calm departure is what allowed the bystanders to act. First, Katz threw himself at Strier, tackling him to the pavement in front of rolling cameras. Bystanders piled on, pinning the shooter until uniformed officers arrived. A passerby later said Strier was very docile once he was subdued, according to Daniel Daz, an eyewitness.
When he started walking away, he was looking at me at that point, and I was walking side by side with him, and he says, "That's what he gets for taking my money." And he kept repeating that.
As for the attorney, Curry, who was shot a total of 6 times,
Transported Curry to a hospital. He is in stable condition.
Curry had wounds to the arms and neck, but doctors listed him in stable critical condition and treated what might have been fatal injuries. The footage that day captured the scare and the rescue. The news stories that followed captured the outrage. Over the next months, the case moved into criminal court. The videotape, the cameras that once covered another trial, became central evidence. The whole attack had been recorded. In 2006, after a jury trial, William Strier was convicted of attempted murder and sentenced to life in prison, plus additional years. The court said the video left little doubt about intent. Strier wanted revenge for a perceived injustice and took the law into his hands. He was punished for it, but what happens when a defendant seeks to punish the judge presiding over his own case in the courtroom? This is Deobra Redden, standing trial for an attempted battery charge. Deobra Redden was no stranger to the justice system.
3 felonies, a gross, 9 misdemeanors, multiple DVs.
I'm in a better place in my mind, my mental health. I have a support system. I just got hired as a teamster for, a union.
He had already pleaded guilty to an attempted battery charge and could face a stretch of up to 3 years in prison if convicted. That is exactly why he was in Judge Mary Kay Holthus's courtroom in the first place. But that single case was just the tip of the iceberg. His record stretched back years, with at least 3 felony convictions and several misdemeanors, many of them tied to violence. Apart from that, Redden had some mental health challenges. According to court filings and multiple reports, he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. The combination of this and his violent past created a dangerous mix. However, on January 3, 2024, Redden didn't show agitation as the case began. Then, he tried to plead his case in the courtroom.
Based on my criminal history, I feel that I shouldn't be sent to prison for a second time.
Have you looked at your criminal history?
The judge's response was different from what he expected.
Time that he gets a taste of something else, because I just can't with that history. In accordance with the laws of the state of Nevada, this court.
Redden didn't like this response. He was so dissatisfied that he did this.
According to court documents, Redden punched Judge Holthus in the head and pulled her hair, and he punched a corrections officer multiple times and spit in another person's face.
Within 2 seconds, Deobra was seen flying towards the judge without warning. The court bailiffs instantly jumped in to help Judge Holthus. They managed to finally pull Redden away from the judge. The struggle was intense. One court-martial suffered a dislocated shoulder and a severe head laceration requiring 25 stitches. The chaos lasted only seconds, but the impact was severe. Judge Holthus was escorted from the courtroom for medical attention. Redden was arrested on the spot and charged with 7 new felonies, including attempted murder of a judicial officer and multiple counts of battery on a protected person. This was Redden's response through his attorney.
He's also pleading not guilty based upon reason of insanity. Just like everybody else, and looking at the video, I thought Mr. Redden was either out of his mind or on drugs at the time of this incident. But after extended discussions with Mr. Redden, Ms. Springer, and other family members, I came to find out that he suffered from severe paranoid schizophrenia.
Redden still made another appearance before Judge Mary Kay Holthus. The judge carried out the same sentence she was about to give before the attack.
I am making my calendar page from that day an exhibit for the court. Nothing's been changed, indicating the sentence I intended to impose.
Redden's family and attorney weren't pleased. In the end, Deobra Redden got 26 to 65 years in a Nevada prison for his shocking attack on the judge. Deobra Redden got an additional sentence for attacking the judge, but his case wasn't the only shocking courtroom incident to make headlines. This is Klaus Grabowski, standing trial in court for abusing Anna Bachmeier. In 1980, Klaus Grabowski kidnapped Anna Bachmeier before he assaulted Klaus Grabowski was a 35-year-old man with a history of abusing children. Despite prior convictions, somehow Klaus was still allowed back into society and back around children. On May 5th, little Anna had a disagreement with her mother. Then she skipped school and never came home. Later, her body was found stuffed in a cardboard box by a canal. The authorities said Grabowski claimed he killed her out of fear that she would report him and he would head back to prison. In court, Anna's mother, Marianne Bachmeier, watched as Grabowski took the stand each day and blamed her daughter. He told the court that Anna had seduced him, and as the trial proceeded, Marianne got angrier and angrier still. Until, on the morning of March the 6th, 1981, Marianne Bachmeier entered the courtroom. Unknown to everyone, inside her long coat was a .22 caliber Beretta. Once she stood in front of Klaus, she pulled the gun out and released the trigger several times. By the time the deputies rushed to restrain her, but the damage was already done. Klaus died right there in the courtroom from the gunshots. Consequently, Marianne was charged with manslaughter and unlawful possession of a firearm. She was sentenced to 6 years but served only 3 before quietly moving to Nigeria and later returning to Germany. Marianne's fury was so fierce it turned the courtroom into a dangerous place for a serial offender. In another courtroom, danger lurks for Jason Stevens in the form of an aggrieved family. This is Jason Stevens, a 23-year-old man facing charges for armed robbery and the kidnapping and murder of a boy in Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville authorities responded to a report of a home invasion that day in 1997. The invasion ended with the abduction of Robert Sparrow III. Reports say that Jason and others had broken into the home that day to steal money and some weed before Jason took the 3-year-old for insurance. After the authorities were alerted of the incident, the search for Robert Sparrow III began, and just days later, the child's body was discovered in the trunk of an abandoned stolen vehicle. Inside the packed courtroom, the family members of the victim sat tense and silent with tension just waiting to burst. During recess, as Stevens stood to sign some court documents, they finally saw a chance.
Their anger boils over.
Deputies finally managed to pull Jason from the pile and have him removed from the room. They also placed the victim's father and one other relative in handcuffs before putting the rest of the family out of the courtroom.
The little boy's godfather is also hauled away. The murderer is eventually led out of the courtroom. So is the family. The killer is sentenced.
Despite the interruption, the trial resumed days later. Stevens was found guilty on all counts, and the court sentenced him to death by electric chair. Jason might have been lucky, but for this killer, he nearly lost his life in the hands of an embittered family who couldn't wait to make him pay. This is Victor Rivas, a 17-year-old currently charged with first-degree murder of Ethan Soto in San Antonio, Texas. In May 2022, police responded to a horrifying scene in Bexar County. There, they discovered the lifeless body of 15-year-old Ethan Soto, who had been shot multiple times and left bleeding out just outside his own home. Investigators say this wasn't a random act of violence. It was targeted, reportedly fueled by a grudge tied to drug-related tensions between local teens. In court, Rivas appeared for a pretrial hearing. Right there in the courtroom were members of Ethan's family, watching the teen accused of murdering their son just feet away. At one point, witnesses claim Rivas made a hand gesture, which some took as a gang sign or dismissive wave, toward the grieving family. And this was all it took for the grieving family to lose it.
First at 5, family members of a murdered teenager accused of attacking the man on trial for it right in the middle of a Bexar County courtroom.
Security quickly rushed to intervene. But before Rivas could be rescued, he had already taken many hits. He sustained minor facial injuries and had to be quickly escorted out for his own safety.